The galaxy was full of warships. Every species that traveled between the stars had built them. The Valkyrie built their ships to be beautiful because they believed war was an art. The Korath built theirs to be terrifying, covered in spikes and blades because they believed war was about fear. The Sylphi built fast ships that could strike and vanish because they believed war was about speed. Humans built ships differently. After the siege of Europa, when Earth's second largest colony was nearly destroyed by raiders, a wounded admiral named Sarah Chun sat in a hospital bed and asked a question that would change everything. Why do we keep building ships meant to win? She asked. What if we built ships that simply refused to lose? That question became the foundation of the Omega Doctrine. It was the most classified document in human space. Only ship captains and senior admirals knew it existed. Its contents were simple, written in plain language that left no room for confusion. Rule 1. If we cannot win, we will make victory worthless. Rule 2. If we cannot survive, neither will the enemy. Rule 3. There is no situation in which attacking humanity is profitable. The Resolute class Battleship was the physical form of these rules. It was not elegant. It was not fast. It was not even particularly powerful compared to the great warships of older species. But it was something else entirely. It was stubborn. The Thermopylae had been in service for 60 years. It had fought in 11 major battles and dozens of smaller ones. It had been declared destroyed 3 times. Each time, it had come back. Its hull was covered in patches and repairs, each one a scar from a wound that would have killed any other ship. The ship had 17 backup power cores. If one was destroyed, another took over. If that one was destroyed, another took over. You could blow the ship in half, and both halves would keep fighting. The engineers who designed it had asked themselves a simple question. What would it take to make this ship stop? Then they had made sure that thing was impossible. The hull was not just armor. It was made of thousands of plates designed to break apart on impact. When enemy fire hit the ship, the plates would explode outward, turning into deadly fragments that flew back at the attackers. Every wound the ship took became a weapon, and hidden deep in the heart of the Thermopylae was something that no other species had ever created. Something so dangerous that humans had agreed never to use it except in the most desperate situations. They called it the Spite-Drive. Captain Vasquez stood on her bridge as the Valkyrie weapon's fire approached. She had 10 seconds, maybe less, before the first shots hit. Around her, her crew was moving with calm efficiency. No one was panicking. No one was crying. They had all served together for years. They knew what was coming. Lieutenant Chan, Vasquez said. Status of civilian passengers. All colonists are secured in the inner compartments, Captain. Blast doors are sealed. Emergency life support is active. Good. Vasquez turned to her weapons officer, a woman named Rodriguez with burned scars on her hands from a battle fought long ago. All batteries ready? Ready and waiting, Captain. Engineering, this is the bridge. Commander Okonkwo, are we ready? Deep in the ship, surrounded by humming machinery and flickering lights, Commander James Okonkwo placed his hand on the Spite Drive's activation panel. He was an old man, older than the captain, and he had helped design this system 40 years ago. He had hoped he would never have to use it. Spite Drive is ready, Captain, he said. May I ask if we are sure about this? Once we activate it, there is no going back. Vasquez looked at her viewing screen. 47 enemy ships. 400 colonists. 62 children. We are sure, she said. All hands, this is the captain speaking. A voice echoed through every corridor of the ship. In the medical bay, doctors paused their work to listen. In the cargo holds, colonists held their children close. In the engine room, engineers gripped their tools and waited. We are under attack by Valkyrie forces. They outnumber us 47-1. They have more guns, more ships, and more power than we do. By any reasonable measure, we cannot win this fight." She paused. The first enemy shots were seconds away. But we are not going to lose either. I have served in this Navy for 40 years. I have watched good people die so that others could live. Every single one of them made the same choice we are making now. They decided that some things are worth fighting for, even when victory is impossible. The ship shuddered as the first wave of Valkyrie fire struck the hull. Alarms screamed. Damage reports began flooding in. But Vasquez's voice did not waver. "There are children on this ship. Families who came to us looking for a new home. People who trusted us to protect them. I will not let them down. I will not let you down. And I will not let those alien bastards think for 1 second that they can attack humanity without paying a price." She took a deep breath. "All hands, battle stations. Condition Omega is now in effect. We hold the line. We do not retreat. We do not surrender. And we make them regret every single shot they fire at us." She turned to Commander Okonkwo's channel one final time. "Engineering. Activate the spike drive." Deep in the ship, Okonkwo pressed the button, and reality itself began to scream. The Valkyrie Dominion had ruled the stars for 3,000 years. Their empire stretched across 100 solar systems. Their warships were beautiful and deadly, made of dark crystal that seemed to drink in the light around them. No species had ever defeated them in open battle. No species had ever tried more than once. High Commander Zetheran stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest, and stared at the small dot on his viewing screen. His 4 eyes narrowed with interest. His blue-scaled face twisted into what passed for a smile among his kind. "Confirm the target," he said to his scanning officer. "Confirmed, High Commander. 1 human vessel. Resolute-class battleship. Registry identifies it as the UN's Thermopylae. It appears to be running on minimal power. We detect approximately 500 life signs aboard." Zetheran's smile grew wider. The humans were a young species. They had only been traveling between stars for 200 years. They were small, soft, and fragile. They lived short lives and died easily. The Valkyrie had been watching them expand across the galaxy, taking note of their strange habits and stranger technology. They had decided it was time to remind these newcomers of their place. "What is the vessel doing in this sector?" Zetheran asked. Long-range scans indicated it is carrying civilian passengers. Colonists, most likely. The ship appears to be experiencing engine difficulties. It is drifting. A broken ship full of civilians. Zetheran could not have asked for a better target. He would destroy this vessel and send a message to every human colony in the region. The Valkyrie were the masters of this part of space. The humans would learn to bow, or they would learn to burn. "Signal the fleet," Zetheran commanded. "All ships to attack formation." Behind the Eternal Conquest, 46 other warships moved into position. They were sleek and fast, armed with weapons powered by the hearts of captured stars. Any one of them could have destroyed a small moon. Together, they were unstoppable. The fleet dropped out of hyperspace around the human vessel, like wolves surrounding a wounded animal. Their weapons powered up. Their targeting systems locked on. The trap was perfect. On the bridge of the Thermopylae, alarms began to scream. Captain Elena Vasquez looked up from her command chair. She was 57 years old. Her hair was gray and cut short. Her face was lined with scars from battles fought long ago. She had served in the United Nations Navy for 40 years. She had seen friends die. She had watched colonies burn. She had buried 3 crews and kept going because someone had to. "Report," she said calmly. Her first officer, a young man named Chun, stared at his console with wide eyes. 47 Valkyrie warships, Captain. They have us surrounded. Weapons are hot. The bridge went silent. Everyone knew what this meant. The Valkyrie did not take prisoners. They did not negotiate. When they came with this much firepower, they came to kill. Vasquez stood slowly. She walked to the center of the bridge and looked at the viewing screen. The Valkyrie ships hung in space like a swarm of black insects, their crystal hulls gleaming in the distant starlight. "How many colonists do we have aboard?" she asked. 412, Captain, including 62 children. Vasquez closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, something had changed in her face. The tiredness was still there, but beneath it was something harder. Something that had been forged in fire and loss and decades of war. "Open a channel to the Valkyrie fleet," she said. "All frequencies." Chun hesitated. "Captain, they're not going to negotiate." "They never do." "I'm not going to negotiate." "Open the channel." Chun did as he was told. Vasquez's voice went out across the void, reaching every Valkyrie ship in the fleet. It was calm and steady, like a doctor delivering bad news. "Valkyrie vessels. This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the United Nations ship Thermopylae. You have targeted a vessel carrying civilian passengers, including children. You have 10 seconds to withdraw your forces and leave this sector." On the Eternal Conquest, Zetheron heard the message and laughed. His officers laughed with him. The idea that a single damaged ship would give orders to a Valkyrie battle fleet was the funniest thing they had heard in years. "Does she not see our guns?" one officer asked between laughs. "Perhaps humans are blind as well as stupid," another replied. Zetheron raised a hand for silence. He was still smiling, but there was cruelty in it now. "Let us teach this human the cost of arrogance. All ships, prepare to fire on my command." The Valkyrie weapons charged. Energy crackled along the crystal hulls of their warships. Death was moments away. Then something unexpected happened. The Thermopylae moved. It did not turn to run. It did not try to escape. Its engines flared with sudden, impossible power, and it began to accelerate directly toward the Valkyrie fleet. Straight at them, like a charging animal. Like a warrior drawing a sword. Zetheron's laughter died in his throat. "What is it doing?" he demanded. No one could answer him. This was not how prey behaved. This was not how any ship behaved when faced with certain death. You ran. You surrendered. You begged for mercy. You did not charge, but the Thermopylae was charging. Along its hull, lights began to flicker on. Panels slid back to reveal gun batteries that had been hidden. Missile tubes opened like hungry mouths. The ship's running lights changed from white to red, as if the vessel itself was bleeding. Or angry. Captain Vasquez's voice came over the come again. It had not changed. It was still calm, still tired, still steady. But now there was something else beneath the words. A promise. A threat. A declaration of war. Your 10 seconds are up. May God have mercy on your souls, because we will not. Zetheron felt something he had not felt in centuries. It took him a moment to recognize it. It was fear. "All ships," he commanded, his voice suddenly tight. "Open fire. Destroy that vessel now." The Valkyrie fleet unleashed hell. And the Thermopylae flew straight into it. The Valkyrie cruiser Silver Dawn was the first to die. Its captain, a decorated officer with 200 years of service, had positioned his ship perfectly. He had a clear shot at the human vessel. His weapons were locked on. His crew was ready. He gave the order to fire, confident that this battle would be over in seconds. Then something hit his ship. It was not a missile. It was not an energy beam. It was a chunk of metal, about the size of a small vehicle, moving faster than anything had a right to move. The Silver Dawn shields were designed to stop energy weapons. They were not designed to stop a piece of solid matter. Traveling at 1/3 the speed of light, the metal punched through the shields like they were not there. It tore through the hull. It kept going, exiting the other side of the ship and continuing into space, leaving a tunnel of destruction behind it. The Silver Dawn broke apart in silence. High Commander Zetheran watched in disbelief. What was that? He demanded. What weapon was that? His officers scrambled to analyze the attack. The answer, when it came, made no sense. It appears to be debris, High Commander. The human ship is firing pieces of its own armor at us. That is impossible. No species waste their own hull as ammunition. The humans do, apparently. More chunks of metal began flying from the Thermopylae. The old battleship was literally tearing itself apart and using the pieces as weapons. Each fragment was accelerated by magnetic rails hidden in the hull, launched at speeds that no shield could stop. The Valkyrie ships tried to dodge, but there were too many projectiles coming too fast. 3 more cruisers died in the first minute, but that was only the beginning. The spy drive activated fully, and the universe went wrong. Every species that traveled faster than light did so by bending the rules of physics. The Valkyrie rode waves in the quantum foam. The Korath created artificial wormholes. The Sylphi compressed space in front of their ships and expanded it behind. Humans had found a different path. During their early experiments with faster-than-light travel, they had discovered something terrible. A way to break causality itself. To exist in multiple places at once. To make the universe unable to decide where something actually was. They had called it the spike drive, because it worked on a simple principle. If we cannot escape, then reality itself will share our pain. When the drive activated, the Thermopylae began to exist in multiple locations simultaneously. Not copies of the ship. The actual ship in several places at once. Space-time twisted and screamed in protest. The sensors on every Valkyrie vessel went insane. I am reading the human ship in 3 different locations, a Valkyrie officer reported, his voice shaking. No, 5 locations. No, 12. High Commander, this is not possible. Destroy them all. Zetheran commanded. The fleet opened fire on every position where the human ship appeared. But the weapons passed through most of them. The false positions were not holograms or decoys. They were the same ship, spread across probability itself. Hitting them was like trying to grab smoke. Worse, the effect was spreading. The battlecruiser Void Hunter suddenly found itself occupying the same space as its sister ship, the Star Cleaver. Neither crew understood what had happened. One moment, they were in different positions. The next moment, they were overlapping, their atoms trying to exist in the same place. The explosion was visible from 1,000 kilometers away. 2 more ships inverted. The spike drive was interfering with their gravity systems, making their sensors report that up was down and left was right. Crew members were thrown against ceilings. Consoles were ripped from floors. The ships tumbled out of control, their crews screaming as their world turned inside out. Through it all, the Thermopylae kept coming. Valkyrie weapons finally found their mark. A direct hit struck the human ship's forward section. Armor plates flew into space. Fire blossomed and died in the vacuum. The bridge itself took damage. Explosions tearing through consoles and throwing crew members across the room. Captain Vasquez was slammed against a wall. She felt something break in her arm. Blood ran down her face from a cut on her forehead. Half her bridge crew was dead or dying. The main viewing screen was cracked. Smoke filled the air. She pulled herself up using a broken railing. Her arm hung at a wrong angle, clearly broken. She did not seem to notice. "Damage report," she said, coughing blood. Lieutenant Chen was still alive, though burned and bleeding. Hull breaches on decks 3 through 7. We have lost forward weapons batteries 2 and 4. Engineering reports the spike drive is overheating. We have maybe 5 minutes before it burns out. Then we have 5 minutes to end this. Vasquez turned to Rodriguez, who was somehow still at her weapons console, despite a piece of metal sticking out of her shoulder. Status of remaining weapons? Rodriguez grinned, blood on her teeth. Still have the main guns, Captain. And the missiles. All of them. Target the command ship. The big one in the center. With pleasure. The Thermopylae turned its broken body toward the eternal conquest. It was bleeding atmosphere from a dozen wounds. It was on fire in 6 places. One of its engine pods was gone completely. But it was still moving. Still fighting. Still refusing to die. Zesaron watched the burning human ship approach and felt true terror for the first time in his life. All ships, concentrate fire on that vessel. He screamed. Destroy it now. Destroy it now. But his fleet was in chaos. Ships were colliding with their own ghost images. Crews were panicking. The spite field was tearing reality apart around them. And through it all, the human ship kept coming, kept firing, kept killing. Vasquez opened a channel to the Velthry fleet one last time. 38 of your ships remaining, she said, her voice steady despite the pain. I recommend you reconsider your attack. Zetheran stared at the burning wreck that was somehow still threatening his fleet. He finally understood what he was fighting. Not a ship. Not a crew. Something far worse. A species that would rather destroy themselves than let evil win. High Commander Zetheran had studied humanity for years. He had read every intelligence report. He had watched recordings of human battles. He had analyzed their tactics, their weapons, their behavior. He had believed he understood them. He had been completely wrong. The Velthry fought for glory, for territory, for the honor of their ancient empire. War was a tool to them, something to be used with precision and purpose. They calculated the cost of every battle before it began. They only fought when victory was certain. Humans did not think this way. Humans did not seem to think about cost at all. Zetheran watched another of his cruisers explode, torn apart by missiles fired from a ship that should have been dead 10 minutes ago. The Thermopylae was a floating wreck now. Half its hull was gone. Its weapons were failing one by one. Fire and debris surrounded it like a cloud. Any sane crew would have surrendered. Any sane captain would have begged for mercy. Captain Vasquez was not begging for anything. High Commander, his communications officer said, voice trembling. The human ship is still advancing. They are still firing. How? Zetheran demanded. How is this possible? We have hit them with enough firepower to destroy a planet. No one could answer him. In desperation, Zetheran accessed his console and pulled up the classified files his intelligence officers had obtained at great cost. They had stolen these documents from human military archives years ago. He had never read them carefully. He had assumed they were propaganda, exaggeration. The typical boasting of a young species trying to appear stronger than they were. Now he read them with new eyes. The first document was called the Omega Doctrine. It was short. Only 3 rules. Rule 1. If we cannot win, we will make victory worthless. Zetheran looked at the remains of his fleet. 20 ships destroyed. 15 more badly damaged. The human ship was dying, yes, but it had cost him more than half his forces. Even if he won, the price would be enormous. Rule 2. If we cannot survive, neither will the enemy. The spike drive. The fragmenting armor. The weapons designed to keep firing, even as the ship fell apart around them. The humans had built a vessel whose entire purpose was to ensure that anyone who killed it would not enjoy the victory. Rule 3. There is no situation in which attacking humanity is profitable. Zetheran finally understood. This was not just a battle doctrine. This was a philosophy, a way of thinking about war that the Velthari had never imagined. The humans did not fight to conquer. They did not fight for glory or territory or honor. They fought because they believed that some things were worth dying for. They fought because they refused to live in a universe where evil could win without paying a price. They had sent this ship to the border not as a patrol or a transport. They had sent it as a message, a warning, a promise: attack us, and we will hurt you. Kill us, and we will make you wish you had not. Every human ship, every human soldier, every human colony was a threat, not because they could win, but because they would never, ever stop fighting. Zetheran pulled up another file. It was a list of battles where human forces had been outnumbered and outgunned. The list was long, very long. In battle after battle, the pattern was the same. Human ships fighting to the last breath. Human soldiers holding positions until they were literally torn apart. Human civilians arming themselves with anything they could find and charging enemies that should have terrified them. And in almost every case, the attackers had paid a terrible price. Ships destroyed, soldiers killed, resources wasted. Even when humans lost, they made their enemies bleed. One report caught Zetheran's attention. It was from a Korath commander who had attacked a human colony 30 years ago. The colony had been small, only a few thousand people. The Korath had brought a battle fleet. By any measure, they should have won easily. They had won. But the colony had fought for 3 weeks. The colonists had turned every building into a fortress. They had set traps in every street. They had fought with guns, with knives, with bare hands. When the last colonist died, she had been holding a bomb, taking 6 Korath soldiers with her. The Korath commander had written, "We have made a terrible mistake. These humans are not like other species. They do not know how to surrender. They do not understand the concept of acceptable losses. Every one of them fights like they have nothing to lose. We cannot conquer them. We can only make them angry. And we do not want to make them angry." The Korath had never attacked a human colony again. Zetheran lowered his console and stared at the burning Thermopylae. The ship was almost dead now. Its engines were failing. Its weapons were nearly spent. It had maybe minutes left, but it was still coming. Still fighting. Still refusing to accept defeat. And in that moment, Zetheran realized something that changed. Everything. The humans had not sent a battleship to protect those. Colonists thought they had sent a warning to every species in the galaxy. This is what happens when you threaten our people. This is the price you pay for attacking us. This is why you should never, ever give us a reason to fight. The Thermopylae was not a ship. It was a symbol. A promise written in fire and blood and stubborn, impossible courage. And Zetheran had just become the example that would prove that promise true. "High Commander," his officer said. "Orders?" Zetheran looked at the remains of his fleet. He looked at the dying human ship that had cost him so much. He looked at the future and saw what would happen if the Velthari continued this war. Every human ship would fight like this. Every human world would resist to the last person. The Velthari would win battles, yes, but they would lose everything that mattered. Their empire would bleed itself dry trying to conquer a species that simply refused to be conquered. "Order all ships to withdraw," he said quietly. His officers stared at him in shock. "High Commander, I gave an order. Withdraw. Now, before that ship kills any more of us." The remaining Velthari vessels began to pull back. Some commanders protested. They wanted to finish the human ship, to claim at least that small victory. Zetheran silenced them with a look. "We came here to send a message," he said. "We succeeded. Just not the message we intended." The Velthari fleet turned and fled. leaving the burning Thermopylae alone in space, surrounded by the wreckage of their shattered pride. The battle lasted 11 minutes. In those 11 minutes, the universe changed. The Thermopylae drifted through a field of crystal debris, the remains of 24 Valkyrie warships that would never return home. The old battleship was barely recognizable. Its hull was torn open in dozens of places. 2 of its 3 engine pods were gone. Fire had burned through entire decks. Atmosphere leaked into space like blood from a wound, but it was still there. Still intact. Still alive. Inside, the survivors moved through smoke-filled corridors, putting out fires and sealing breaches. The spy drive had burned out completely, melting half the engineering section in the process. The main weapons were dead. Life support was running on backup power. None of that mattered. Captain Elena Vasquez sat on the ruined bridge, her broken arm wrapped in a makeshift bandage torn from her uniform. The cut on her forehead had stopped bleeding, but dried blood covered half her face. She had not slept in 18 hours. She had not eaten in 12. She had just fought a battle that should have been impossible to survive. Lieutenant Chung approached her carefully. He was burned and bruised, his uniform torn, but he was smiling. "Captain," he said, "I have a report from the civilian compartments." Vasquez looked up at him with tired eyes. "Tell me." All colonists accounted for. 412 souls, including 62 children. Not a single civilian casualty. Vasquez closed her eyes. For a moment, she did not speak. When she opened them again, there were tears on her face, cutting lines through the blood and dirt. "Thank God," she whispered. The rescue fleet arrived 6 hours later. The lead ship was the UN's Resolution, a brand new carrier fresh from the shipyards of Mars. Its captain, a young man named Marcus Webb, had pushed his engines beyond their limits to reach the Thermopylae in time. When he saw what remained of the old battleship, he ordered his crew to slow down and approach with respect. "My God," he breathed as the Resolution came alongside the battered vessel. "She is still holding together." The rescue operation took hours. Shuttles carried the wounded to the Resolution's medical bays. Engineers from the rescue fleet swarmed over the Thermopylae, sealing breaches and restoring power. The colonists were transferred to the carrier, where they were given food, water, and warm beds. Captain Webb personally boarded the Thermopylae to speak with Captain Vasquez. He found her still on the bridge, refusing to leave until every member of her crew had been evacuated first. "Captain Vasquez," Webb said, saluting. "The entire Navy is talking about what you did here. 47 enemy ships. You held them off with a single vessel." Vasquez looked at him with eyes that had seen too much. "I did not hold them off, Captain. My crew did. My ship did. I just gave the orders. How did you do it? How did you survive against those odds?" Vasquez was quiet for a long moment. She looked around her ruined bridge. The cracked viewing screen. The burned consoles. The empty chairs where her officers had sat before the battle began. Some of those chairs would never be filled again. "They made a mistake," she finally said. "They thought this was a battle. What was it then?" Vasquez smiled. It was a thin, tired expression with no joy in it. But there was pride. And there was something else. Something fierce and unbreakable. A lesson. The story of the Thermopylae spread across the galaxy like fire. Every species heard about the old human battleship that had faced impossible odds and refused to die. They heard about the spike drive, the fragmenting armor, the captain who kept fighting with a broken arm and blood on her face. More importantly, they heard about what the Valkyrie had lost: 24 warships, thousands of crew members, a reputation for invincibility that had taken 3,000 years to build, all because they attacked one human vessel carrying colonists. The Velthari Dominion did not speak publicly about the battle. They did not need to. Their silence said everything. Within 6 months, they had signed non-aggression treaties with every human colony in the region. Within 2 years, they had withdrawn their forces from the entire Orion Spur. Within 5 years, their empire had begun to collapse as other species, inspired by human defiance, started to resist Velthari control. The Thermopylae was repaired. It took nearly a year. Engineers replaced the burned-out spike drive with a new one. They patched the hull. They rebuilt the weapons. They restored the ship to full fighting capability. They did not change its name. They never even considered it. Captain Vasquez retired from active service. She had given 40 years to the Navy. She had earned her rest. But before she left, she performed one final duty. She attended the funeral for the crew members who had died in the battle. There were 37 of them. 37 men and women who had given their lives to protect 400 colonists they had never met. Their names were read aloud. Their service was honored. Their sacrifice was remembered. When the ceremony ended, Vasquez stood alone at the memorial wall where their names had been carved. She touched each name with her fingers, speaking words that no one else could hear. Then she walked away, carrying their memory with her forever. Years passed, decades. The Battle of the Kepler Boundary became legend. It was taught in military academies across human space. It was studied by strategists from a dozen species. It became a symbol of something that words could not quite capture. And in the halls of power, in the meeting rooms where species decided the fate of worlds, a new proverb began to circulate. It was whispered by diplomats, muttered by admirals, taught to children as the most important lesson they would ever learn. Never target a human warship. They take it personally. The Thermopylae served for another 60 years. It fought in 12 more battles. It never lost. When it was finally retired, they did not scrap it. They made it a museum, a monument to the crew that had held the line against impossible odds. On the bridge, preserved exactly as it had been on that day, there was a plaque. It held the words that Captain Vasquez had spoken before the battle began. We hold the line. We do not retreat. We do not surrender. And we make them regret every single shot they fire at us. Below the words, someone had added a final line. No one knew who. It did not matter. They came for our people. They learned why that was a mistake. And so the story ended. Not with victory or defeat, but with a simple truth that would echo through history forever. Humanity was not the strongest species in the galaxy. They were not the oldest or the wisest or the most advanced. But they were something else. Something that made even the mightiest empires think twice. Before raising their weapons, they were the species that refused to give up. They were the species that made their enemies pay. They were the species that would burn the universe down before they let evil win. And that, in the end, was enough.